Next up is this.
Hold it. Run that back.
Wait a minute. Go right.
There, freeze that.
Full screen.
Okay, freeze that.
Tighten up on that way.
Vector in on that guy by the back wheel.
Zoom in right here on this spot.
With the right equipment, the image could be enlarged
Every
and
second
sharp.
of an asthma attack
Besides,
can
What's
feel
an
like
enhancement program?
eternity.
can you clear that up any?
I don't know. Let's enhance it.
Enhance section A6.
Next up is this. It's a new iteration of the Wii Sports series.
So I did say in my predictions video that I might indeed do a ranking of the announcements if I felt the Direct was quality, and I had a feeling it would be. I did say I was excited for it and I had a good feeling, but never could I have ever expected that it would be as good as it was. It was remarkable. I think one of, if not the best Direct they've ever had. So I'm going to rank every single one of the announcements from the ones I'm least interested in to the one that absolutely just snapped my perception of reality. All the while, I'm going to give my observations, what I've noticed, and subtextual analysis on what these announcements mean, and even the significance of what wasn't announced. I feel a lot of these announcements hint towards a Nintendo Switch Pro, that there will indeed be a Nintendo Switch 2, that Nintendo still believe in console generations, that there might be a rebrand of Nintendo Switch Online, what they plan to do with DLC, cloud releases, remasters. Very quickly, before we get into the ranking, I do think that Breath of the Wild 2 is a lock-in for this year. There's nothing that is currently taking up that holiday 2022 spot, and there always is a holiday release, because there has to be a focal point of the year, the big Black Friday selling point, and there isn't one. And if they're going to announce one, it'll be in June. And if it's announced in June, that gives them 6 months to announce and release a game, and certainly they could announce and release a game in 6 months like they did with Metroid Dread. But that just does not happen often enough for me to have any faith that it'll happen again. It's too rare of an occurrence for me to put blind faith in that possibility. But the thing is, there's not that many that they could lean on, right? Like Mario Kart 9, I will go into this when I get to Mario Kart, but it's basically confirmed, to my point, to be in development, if not nearly finished development, but it's not coming out this year. There's no way. Certainly Mario Odyssey 2 could happen, but maybe I'm looking too deep into things, but I don't imagine that they'd want to release a 3D Kirby platformer where you capture abilities and reuse them, and then do a Mario 3D platformer with a very similar mechanic in the same year. But to me, it just doesn't feel logical, so I don't think there will be an Odyssey 2. They're not going to lean on a Pikmin 4. Xenoblade 3, while the franchise is critically acclaimed, beloved cult classics, it's coming out in September. They're not going to lean on that for their holiday release, which doesn't leave that many options. Like I said in my predictions discussion, if Breath of the Wild 2 gets delayed, I am certain there will be a Legend of Zelda release for this year. Whether it's a remake or a port. It could be, for example, a Wind Waker HD or Twilight Princess HD port from Wii U to Switch. I, in my predictions video, alluded to perhaps a Link Between Worlds being brought to Switch, reimagined in high definition. I do think they will be leaning on a Legend of Zelda game come holiday, and I imagine they'd like it to be Breath of the Wild 2. Whether it can be or not remains to be seen, but I do believe that is the plan. Again, like I said in the predictions video, I didn't expect to see Prime 4, and we didn't, and to me that doesn't really mean anything. It just confirms what we already knew. It's not happening this year. The only other potential holiday release could be that rumored Donkey Kong entry, but I'm wary of placing too much stock in rumors. As much as I would love for that to happen, I'm not getting my hopes up. And I personally am unsure how likely that is, especially compared to the idea of Breath of the Wild 2 carrying their holiday push, because that's already been announced. And by default, it is more likely to happen than something that hasn't been announced and is only rumored. Regardless, I'll move on now to the actual announcements, rankings, observations, analyses, and all of my objectively wrong opinions. So right off the bat, I'm just going to say that I just want to apologize very quickly to the fans of the Front Mission series, the Live Alive/Live Alive. Editor's note: I was wrong both times. It's Live Alive series, and the Taiko no Tatsujin series. I've never heard of them before, and I don't really have any opinions to share. And it's not their fault necessarily. Perhaps the trailers were cut poorly, Perhaps it's a me problem. I have no doubt that there are fans of these series, and for them I'm truly happy. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who just had given up hope, and now that hope has been reinstated. It would be like if I mean like, for example, if they had announced remakes of the Club Penguin DS and Wii games, I would have been the happiest man alive. I fully acknowledge that it's absolutely a me problem. I just don't really have any interest in Front Mission, Live a Live, or Taiko no Tatsujin. The third-party representation in this direct was the worst it has ever been. I don't think that would be controversial of me to say. I think that there's not really any way to sugarcoat it. I just think the third-party announcements were all poor. None of the announcements were that interesting to me. It felt like they were ticking boxes. And what was there didn't seem to be running very well. Starting with what should have been the best third-party announcement ended up, for me, being the worst announcement of the whole direct. MLB The Show 2022. I'm sure the baseball fans are delighted they're going to have a baseball game on the Nintendo Switch, and maybe I'm swayed by the fact that nobody plays baseball where I live, but it looked to be running awfully. I think WWE 2K18 will have a competitor for worst running game on Nintendo Switch. There were at times where it felt like a stop motion video was playing. The resolution was awful. It just seems very poorly optimized, and that's sad, because clearly they put a lot of heart into this release. The idea of cross-platform play, that's massive. FIFA doesn't have that. Again, I have to disclaim this by saying I enjoy FIFA on Nintendo Switch. I know that sounds insane. It's stripped down, but it's nonetheless optimized. MLB looks painfully unoptimized. They cared enough to implement cross-platform and cross-play support, but I don't know what's going on here. Moving on, and to be honest, this is kind of interchangeable in the rankings. Disney Speedstorm. It's a Disney racer, and that seems like a genius idea, you know. Disney have such a plethora of interesting, likable, well-renowned characters, and honestly, you know, the game itself did look interesting. It looked well made, but then I just completely lost faith because the game is being made by Gameloft and it is free to play. I'm not going to get into it too heavily because I could talk for hours about my opinions on Gameloft, but to me, Gameloft are kind of like the Illumination of video games. They kind of just ape what everybody else has done, do it a bit worse, and they exist solely to make money. It's a money-making company. That's why all of their games are free to play and riddled with microtransactions. They take other ideas and just do them cheaper. They're mainly mobile developers, and as you can see, I'm showing on screen a lot of the games they've made, and you can clearly see that the focus is not on creativity or integrity. It's on making money, and it's free to play. The game the Disney Racer is free to play. This is going to be. It's going to. I don't have really any faith in it. It's such a good idea. It's just a shame that it had to be ruined. And I know it's crazy that I'm saying that. It's not even out yet, but I literally have no faith in this game.
Hey, listen!
Okay, so now we're actually getting into... That's funny, because those are the only two announcements where I really feel extremely pessimistic. Now we're kind of getting into mid-lukewarm territory. Star Wars The Force Unleashed and the Ezio Collection. Like I said earlier, the third-party support really felt like they were ticking boxes. There's already a load of Star Wars games on the Switch. There's already loads of Assassin's Creed games on the Switch. As an editor's note, in retrospect, Assassin's Creed is not possessive. It should just be Assassin's Creed blank games, not Assassin's Creed's games. Like, what the f*** was I thinking? In my defense, I kind of broke tradition and decided to just use notes rather than a script. I do prefer writing these long scripts, but just sometimes it just does not suit the vibe or the tone that I'm going for. However, I will concede that yes, I am indeed a donut for making what is ostensibly a mistake a 5-year-old would make. Both of these are good, you know, the Star Wars The Force Unleashed. Many say it's the best of the Star Wars action games, and many say that the Ezio Collection is the best of the Assassin's Creed games. But these announcements did feel uninspired. And for fans of these games, I'm sure this was an excellent announcement. I'm sure if The Force Unleashed is your favorite game, I'm sure you're glad to have it on Nintendo Switch. And as a lot of third-party games are, these games don't seem to be running very well. And like, just disregarding the fact that the games aren't running very well, because that's not really the point. The Nintendo Switch it's not the most powerful console in the world, and there's going to be problems when you're reporting these mammoth games, as it were, to such a to a glorified tablet. That's not the problem. To me, it just feels uninspired. It feels like we've got the other Assassin's Creed games. Let's get these ones. We've got the other Star Wars games. Let's get this last one. We'll just tick that box. And these games don't appeal to different people. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's I suppose what I'm trying to say is that the niche that these games fill has already been filled by games in their own series. You're appealing directly to people you're already appealing to, if you know what I mean. And I'm very happy for those people. For those people who, like, Star Wars is their favorite film series and it's their favorite genre of game, because I guess Star Wars kind of is a genre of game at this point. And Assassin's Creed fans, I'm sure they're delighted to have what are arguably the best Assassin's Creeds on Switch. But I don't feel like these, and again, maybe I'm glorifying what a Nintendo Direct means, but these don't really feel like games you give spotlight to in a Nintendo Direct, because they're uninspired choices. Like, for example, I predicted there would be a Grand Theft Auto 5 port, and I was wrong. I still think there will be one at some point. I know a lot of people say that it's too big, it's too difficult for the Switch. I disagree. Certainly the online would be arguably impossible to implement because of its sheer size. But I do think that the base game itself could fit in Switch, which is why I predicted that it would. That would be an interesting announcement for a Direct, because apart from the Definitive Edition trilogy, the remastered one, there's no Grand Theft Auto representation on Nintendo Switch. It would be interesting. It would be inspired, in my opinion. Likewise, when Disco Elysium was announced, when Outer Wilds was announced, they are not like anything on the Switch. That was excellent third-party support. That was new, it was fresh, it was inspired, it was what everyone was missing out on if they only owned a Nintendo Switch console. If you already own a Nintendo Switch console and you're a Star Wars fan or you're an Assassin's Creed fan, you already own Star Wars games or Assassin's Creed games. These are just more. I just feel like the third-party support in this Direct was just weak. It was uninspired. Certainly quite inspired, but nonetheless low in the ranking is the No Man's Sky port. No Man's Sky, look, No Man's Sky is an excellent game. I don't think that would be controversial to say. And to be honest, I'm probably not the most qualified person to say that either, because I haven't really put that much time into it. And it's fantastic that people who only own a Nintendo Switch can experience this game. But like I've said previously, I do have another platform. I have the PC that I use to edit these videos. I can run No Man's Sky on that PC, so I'm not going to buy it on the Switch. It would just be more expensive and it runs worse, so it's not interesting for me. But I'm glad that they have put it on. A lot of people say there's no point putting something on if it's just going to run badly, and I heavily disagree. There's lots of people out there who only have a Nintendo Switch or only have access to a Nintendo Switch, and for them, they don't care how badly a game runs. That was like me 4 years ago. I didn't care how badly things ran on the Nintendo Switch. There's that portability factor, and that eliminates the... Look, I mean, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I know that anecdotally, most people I've spoken to prefer having a port over no port, no matter how it runs. Ports like FIFA, The Outer Worlds, The Witcher 3, they're all low quality compared to their PlayStation counterparts, but they're nonetheless appreciated. Unless it's god-awful like the WWE 2K18 was, or like how MLB appears it might be. Most folk don't have a problem, but even then, I'm sure the MLB fans will just be happy to have a baseball game on Switch, and the WWE fans were surely happy to just have a WWE game on Switch. Again, I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but more often than not, in these respective fandoms, something is better than nothing when it comes to Nintendo Switch ports, and that's true for me. I'm sure there's a lot of folk who feel differently to how I do and how a lot of my friends do, but that's my experience anyway. Because not only is there a portability factor, but like, if it is your only platform to play a specific game, you might be disappointed that it doesn't run well. But I guarantee, and I know that most folk who only have access to a Nintendo Switch would rather have the game than not have it, even if it runs poorly. Because like that was me not so long ago. The Outer Worlds runs miserably on Nintendo Switch, but I was still glad that it was on Switch because it was the only way I could play that game at that specific moment in time. So yeah, for me, No Man's Sky, completely irrelevant, uninteresting, because I'm not going to buy it on Switch because now I have another platform to play it on, but I'm very happy for anyone who is interested and wanted to play it. Okay, so this is probably going to be the most controversial ranking that I have.
Don't say it. Don't you say it.
Earthbound.
The gloves are off. Listen, you son of a bitch. What the f
your problem?
No, you got me all wrong. This middle of the road ranking is not indicative of the quality of the game. It's rather the significance of the announcement.
Excuse me.
I know there's millions of Earthbound fans, and quite possibly the biggest hole in my knowledge of video games is Earthbound. I for some reason have not ever gotten into Earthbound, and this is despite the fact that I own a Wii U, and I own Earthbound on Wii U. I've just never booted it up. But that's exactly the point. Nintendo positioned this Earthbound announcement of Earthbound coming to Nintendo Switch as a big deal, a big announcement, a significant announcement. I don't think it is. I think it's a good announcement for sure. But the way Nintendo positioned it just didn't sit right with me. When all these other NES or SNES games get announced to be coming to the service, the Nintendo Online service, they just get their own separate trailers just in a random kind of monthly update. Earthbound is excellent, but its inclusion is not super significant because it has already been on Virtual Console. It was on Virtual Console on Wii U, and it's great that it's coming to Nintendo Switch so that more people can play it. But this is not as big of a deal as Nintendo made it out to be. It just isn't. It's great. I need to get to it, but I think honestly think there would have been a more positive reaction if they had just done an individual trailer for Earthbound, like they have done for Donkey Kong Country, for all of these other SNES games that they've just randomly released. And I suppose it probably doesn't help that Mr. Itoi was retweeting the Direct beforehand, getting everyone's hopes up for a Mother 3 announcement. I suppose that's probably influencing my cynicism in this scenario. Look, in short, Earthbound coming to Switch is a great announcement, but it was positioned as an excellent announcement, and it really isn't. It's just an announcement, you know? It's great, it's good, it's just not mind-bendingly excellent. It's middle of the road, which is why I've positioned it as such. However, you're not wrong if you think it was the best announcement of the whole Direct, because I'm sure Earthbound fans would think so. If Earthbound is your favorite game, then for sure, you know, it's going to be at the top of your list. When you see what's at the top of my list, you're going to question my sanity, and you're going to question why I put Earthbound in the middle and, you know, this specific game at the very top. And you'll be right to question it, but I suppose the facts are our own biases. They influence what we think. And in this scenario, I just think Earthbound was a very middle of the road announcement. To me, I don't think it would be controversial of me to say that Banjo-Kazooie's inclusion in the N64 online service is way more significant than Earthbound's. Earthbound coming to Nintendo Switch Online would have been a massive deal if it hadn't been on Wii U. Moving on to the next on the list. Look, I said in my predictions video, Advance Wars hasn't won me over yet, and I know there's a lot of Advance Wars fans. I just didn't grow up with Advance Wars. I'm not going to pick it up at launch. I'll wait for reviews. Perhaps I'll wait for it on sale. It just hasn't grabbed me yet. And again, this is a me problem. This is absolutely a me problem. The art style just does not appeal to me. Interesting, but just it's mid. It hasn't won me over yet. Look, I don't have much to say about Triangle Strategy other than the music sounds good, the visuals look excellent, and honestly, whether I get Triangle Strategy or not will be entirely dependent on the strength of its story, and I can't suss that out before the game's even out. I won't be picking up Triangle Strategy at launch. I'll be waiting a while for the discourse to evolve, and eventually I will decide if it's worth picking up or not. It'll be almost entirely dependent on the strength of the story. Okay, next, the Metroid Dread update. This update on its own, it doesn't mean too much to me. I don't really have much interest in a one-hit difficulty mode, and I don't have much interest in a boss rush mode. But it's just an interesting announcement to me. If we look back, everybody thought there would be Mario Odyssey DLC, but instead they did a Balloon World free update. This Dread update is not as significant content-wise as that update was. So I suppose you could argue that this tiny update suggests that, you know, they don't really have interest in doing a massive DLC, and they just said, look, we're gonna follow it up, get a couple extra headlines, I suppose, try and keep the spotlight as much as possible on Dread for a while, for sure.
For sure.
I recently made a video about why Nintendo are happy with Dread sales, but why we should still be fearful for the future of the series. But I do think that Nintendo are happy with the sales, and this Dread update confirms it. That, to me, gives me some hope for DLC. I think if there is DLC, it should not follow the events of Dread, or if it does, it shouldn't follow Samus. You can't really make Samus-centric sequel DLC Because you can't just put in more levels like a Mario, or you can't put in more shrines like a Zelda. There's a definitive end. So I was thinking perhaps a spin-off where we see, look, just off the top of my head, perhaps you play as the antagonist of the next game, and they are setting up events that are going to play out in the sequel to Dread. That would be interesting to my mind. It would also serve as some extra development for an eventual sequel. Otherwise, I think Prologue DLC would be excellent, just to see what happens between the events of Fusion and Dread, because it's alluded to, but not clearly outlined. I think that would be interesting. So while the Dread update itself is not super interesting, I have ranked it in kind of upper mid territory because of its significance. I do think it is significant. Right, in upper mid as well, Fire Emblem fans, I apologize. I'm not very interested in Fire Emblem Warriors, and I'll explain briefly why. Warriors games are made or broken based on my attachment to the source material, because a lot of these Warrior games are fan service. There's no other way to put it. I love Hyrule Warriors, but that's because of my inherent nostalgic attachment to that series. I don't have a nostalgic attachment to Fire Emblem. I don't have that much investment in the series. Three Houses is in my backlog. A lot of people have recommended to me, and I think it looks excellent. I haven't not experienced it out of spite, more so out of a lack of time. And as such, by default, I just don't have much investment in Fire Emblem Warriors. However, I have ranked it above so many others because I think it's interesting. I think it's a great precedent to set. It's like Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity. It's just interesting to spin off of a popular entry and expand that story. I think that's a fantastic precedent to set, and I'd love Nintendo to give that treatment to many of the other games in their ever-expanding pantheon. Fundamentally, all Warriors games are the same, but that also means that all Warriors games are really good. They're quite brain dead, I'll give you that, but they're fun. They just are. Kingdom Hearts Cloud Edition. I'm very positive on this. A lot of people say, oh, this is lazy, Kingdom Hearts should have been ported, the Switch can handle it. And that's true, but if Square had the time and the resources to port Kingdom Hearts natively, they would have. This is a compromise scenario. It would either, to my mind, like I said, if they could have ported it, they would have, but they can't. They don't have the time, they don't have the budget, they don't have the resources. Or they just simply cannot afford to allocate that time, those resources. So in this scenario, it's cloud versions or no versions. And for people who only own a Nintendo Switch, I'm sure they're just fine with this. However, I do think it should be priced a lot better. It's priced way too high for a game you don't exactly own, because when those cloud services go down, how are you going to play that game? It's just silly. These games should not be priced as high as they are. The presence of Kingdom Hearts is a valuable presence. I don't know anything about Chrono Cross. I just know that it's very critically acclaimed and people have recommended me play it, so I'm absolutely interested in this. Even if the upscaling is a little bit dodgy. Portal. This is so significant to me. It's absolutely not something I'm excited about, but I think it is like the third or second most significant announcement of the entire Direct, because it shows like Portal is made by Valve. Right? Valve is making their own Switch competitor, the Steam Deck. But clearly, if Valve are putting their own games on Nintendo Switch, they don't see Nintendo Switch as a competitor. So we've been arguing all this while about, oh, is Steam Deck a competitor or not? Valve has just stepped in and said, no, it's not. Steam Deck is not a competitor. We're putting our games on Nintendo Switch. Look, and I don't want to bog down the runtime any more than I need to. But I actually don't think that the Steam Deck is a direct competitor to the Nintendo Switch. I think it's an inadvertent competitor. People will compare, but they're not going to buy either or. They're just going to compare. And it's undeniable that will reflect badly on them. They'll weather the storm for sure, but there will indeed be a storm. Klonoa. I actually owned Klonoa on the Wii. I never finished it because it never truly grabbed me in that moment. And then, of course, like an absolute
idiot, imbecile, thickhead,
traded it in because that's just what kids do. And I regret that because I learned like in the last 5 years it's one of the most critically acclaimed games. It's a cult classic. And I owned it and then I gave it away. I might as well have given it away. Have you seen the GameStop return rates? So no, I'm interested in Klonoa. I absolutely am interested in Klonoa. I think I'm not a fan, but I'm really interested. This was an excellent announcement. Cuphead DLC. Cuphead is one of the most critically acclaimed games of all time, and it is still somehow underrated. It is incredibly good. The effort just absolutely drips off of the screen, like every animation is made with painstaking effort. I respect Studio MDHR more than perhaps any other studio. The love, time and effort they put into their games is second to none. Second to none. And this DLC looks like a follow-up to what was already an excellent base game. I have no reason to believe this will not be 10 out of 10 DLC. Kirby actually answers a couple of subtextual questions, but apart from that, it looks better every single time I see it. Look, you can't judge movement before you've tried it yourself, but I know enough from looking at it that it looks excellent. It looks so refined. The art style is phenomenal. People certainly give out about the Nintendo Switch not having cutting edge graphics, but that's completely irrelevant to me because I think Nintendo make the most aesthetically appealing games. I still think Wind Waker HD is the greatest looking game of all time, and that's perhaps a controversial opinion in a world with The Last of Us Part 2, but it just goes to show that when you have such talented artists, it really does not matter how powerful your hardware is. It just doesn't. The mechanics look as interesting as always. The soundtrack, I mean, we've barely heard any of the soundtrack. It just sounds amazing. There's no other way to put it. I love the atmosphere. I love the vibe. It just seems very relaxed, very chill, and yet simultaneously intriguing, because the one thing Kirby has over Mario is unique plot setup. We know what's going to happen in all the Marios, but not really knowing what's going on in Kirby is just interesting. Whether you like story or not, Kirby has ambition in its story where Mario does not, and that just, it creates intrigue, it creates mystery, and that is so compelling. Moving on, for many this was the announcement of the Direct. For me, it was an excellent announcement. I've got 4 others that are above it, and if you know me, you probably know what they are, and you probably know that I am objectively in the wrong. I have objectively bad opinions, but 4th from the top is Xenoblade 3. I've already said that Fire Emblem is in my backlog and Earthbound is in my backlog, and those are 2 that I really do need to get to, but there is no more significant a series in my backlog than Xenoblade. Put simply, I actually just do not have the time or the spare money to invest in an entire series like Xenoblade as much as I want to. I know they're all excellent because everyone says they're excellent. Everyone always recommends Xenoblade, and the developers clearly care so much about this series. Every trailer for every game in this series looks remarkable. I use the soundtracks in these videos all the time. I think this is a massive announcement, and it's almost funny to me because people are wondering, like, why do Nintendo care so much about Xenoblade? Like, it doesn't sell very well, it sells modestly. But see, the thing is, it's not just about overall sales, right? The way I see it, Nintendo have a lot of people that they appeal to, and they have to spread those resources to appeal to also to different cultural standards. For example, Western-centric games often sell best in the West, but not as well in the East, and vice versa. There's crossover for sure, but there's a lot of people in the left side of the Venn diagram. It's important to create brand loyalty, to create fans, and to appeal directly to fans from all regions. This is where, for example, Xbox have failed. Xbox have no fans in the East because they prioritize the West. Like, for example, I would love Nintendo to make a new Pikmin. I've made that much very evident. And even though their sales are comparable, the cultural significance is absolutely not. How many mature, story-oriented, anime-style game genres do in-house Nintendo produce? Like, not many. It's Xenoblade and Fire Emblem for the most part. Pikmin is great. I love Pikmin. But it's not as culturally significant as Xenoblade because it's a vibe that's captured by other series. It's relaxed, it's kid-friendly, it's animated. It's unique for sure, but what cultural purpose does it serve that is unique? None. The game is unique, its cultural significance is not, whereas Xenoblade's cultural significance absolutely is unique. It means therefore there are more Xenoblade games because there need to be more Xenoblade games. That's at least my take on it, because they're hardly sending a series out to die like that. As much as people like to say it, they're not idiots. They're not idiots in the boardroom. They know what they're doing. Right, so then, of course, 3rd from the top, I suppose 4th in the overall ranking, I guess, is Splatoon 3. This is silly, right? It probably shouldn't be one of my most anticipated games of the year, but it is, because I have such an incredible amount of nostalgia for the first Splatoon, and I thought the second one was even better. It took everything the first one did. I just multiplied it by 100. I know that Splatoon 3 will be excellent, and this trailer confirms it almost more so by what they didn't show. Confirming Salmon Run is absolutely a relief. It was one of the best parts of Splatoon 2. We don't know anything for sure when it comes to Nintendo, but I think I can say with 99% confidence there will be a Splatoon-centric Direct, because there always is. So I imagine they're holding back a lot of information for that Splatoon-centric Direct. I have a lot of hope for new content, new modes. For example, many say that Splatoon would be ripe for a Battle Royale mode. I like the idea, I just don't see how it's feasible with the structure that Splatoon has of painting the ground, diving into that ground to recharge and coming out, because it's not a player versus player focused affair, and Battle Royale is inherently player versus player. It would have to be a remixed concept, perhaps a turf war where you've got 4 teams of 4 going up against each other, but even then you'd be really stretching the limits of Nintendo's online service. I think a Splatoon Battle Royale would be excellent if they remixed the concept. Like Smash Run on 3DS, where you have to build up a loadout naturally, and you've got maybe 5 or 10 minutes to do so before you go into a match. Those are just off the top of my head. The point is, the concept would have to be remixed significantly. And even then, I don't think it would work, because I just don't think that Nintendo's online service could carry that sheer amount of weight. A massive map filled with players. I mean, Nintendo's online service is buckling as is. Finally, I find it a little bit bizarre that there was no release date. They gave a window of summer, which means we are at minimum 3 months away and at maximum 5 months away, which is, it's odd that there isn't a release date, because, spoiler alert for the top of the list, but Strikers has a release date in summer, and Switch Sports also has a release date. Both of them were announced in that Direct, and they're coming out soon, and they got release dates. So it's a little bit strange to me that Splatoon didn't get a release date. Maybe they don't want to cannibalize pre-orders, but I've never heard of a company not wanting to cannibalize pre-orders. Like, the amount of people that do pre-order is, especially 5 months out, there's not as many folk who do that. I don't think it's any cause for concern, to be honest. I do think that it's interesting. It sounds like they might be under a lot of pressure to get it done, which might suggest a delay. I certainly hope not. The lack of a release date in this scenario is good, because they would, if they could nail down a release date, they would. They can't, so they're not. So that is objectively a good thing. I suppose I'm just curious as to why they can't nail down a release date. Hopefully nothing's going wrong. I certainly hope that the work environment is a healthy one, and the folk there aren't feeling the pressure, as it were, to make that release window. I was quite happy when Nintendo pushed Animal Crossing back from 2019 to 2020, because it gave that team the time they needed, and I thought that was a fantastic move. And look, if Splatoon needs to be pushed, just push it. It's not worth burning out a development team to make an arbitrary release window. Right, so in my predictions video, I had a section for pipe dreams, wild swings that I thought had no chance, just the wildest wishes possible. Mario Strikers was up there on that list, because I was convinced it was not going to happen because of the homogenization of the Mario Sports series. Put simply, if Strikers did come back, it would be like Mario Football is in Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, just a basic kind of stripped down sports game. So I thought, even if Strikers did come back, the essence of it wouldn't be the same. And honestly, I just didn't think it would come back. I thought Mario Football would be relegated to minigames in other Mario sports games. But oh my god, it did come back. Like, it's back, and the essence is intact. I literally never expected that to happen, and maybe that's stupid of me, but I could not have imagined that this would happen. I'm a massive football fan, but I have some serious beef with FIFA. Mario Strikers is just pure arcade fun. It's not even really football. It's just Nintendo's own spin. There's no intricate build-up or meticulous deconstruction of the opposition. It's just brute force, arcadey, pure fun. Mario Strikers does what all Mario sports games should. Deconstruct the essence of the sport and make something new. Keep the spirit, but make it faster, more accessible, less human, more fun. It looks quirky, interesting, inspired. It looks exceptional. So number 2. This will probably be number 1 for most people, but I'm not most people. If you look at some of the videos I've made in the past, you've already figured out what number 1 is for me. But for number 2, the Mario Kart 8 DLC, it's the greatest thing. It's just the greatest thing ever. It's double the content. It's like a whole another game almost. And not only is the content significant, but it just means so much. It means so much. It tells us so much about Nintendo's attitude, what they're going to do, what their business plan seems to be for the next Switch. I'm actually in the process of preparing a script on that topic, but I'll give the Cliff Notes version. So I mean, the big question for me was, where is Mario Kart 9, right? I was of the opinion that I figured there's only 2 scenarios for Mario Kart 9, right? And they both mean significantly different things. Mario Kart 9 will be used to launch the next Nintendo platform, or it will come out on Switch, and that will just mean there won't be another Nintendo platform. Instead, Nintendo are going to do going to use the Apple strategy, kind of iterate on what they have, yearly refreshes like iOS. Everything is backwards compatible, like, to an extent. That's what I thought they would do because of the success of the Switch. Make it an ever-present of everyone's household. Just constant refreshes like iPhone. I don't think they're going to do that though, because they're lengthening the lifespan of Mario Kart 8, which says to me they want more Mario Kart content. They value it as a franchise and they want to use it to make money, but they're saving Mario Kart 9. They're not going to put that out on Switch. They're sticking to their rule, the rule that I thought they would possibly abolish, of 1 Mario Kart per generation. Because I was of the opinion there were no more generations. They didn't believe in that generational strategy anymore, but clearly they do, and they are clinging to that belief that Mario Kart is a 1 per generation franchise. This says to me that they are planning another generation, and Mario Kart 9 will be used to launch that generation. Again,
that's just a theory. A game theory.
That's just what it seems like to me. The Switch clearly is a generation, not a platform like iOS is. There probably will be a Switch 2, and it probably won't be out this year. I do, however, believe there will be a Switch Pro this year. Because if you look at the release schedule for this year, it's incredible. This is the most stacked year since 2017, which even then I'd argue this year, if everything pans out the way we think it will, it's more stacked than 2017. It's bigger. And we're 5 years in, right? This is weird because all consoles, all platforms, they tail off at the end. Wii died very quickly, same with Wii U and 3DS, because they pull support from the current gen and push it to next gen. It's just the pattern that they follow, which says to me if they're not winding down support, if they're speeding up, if they're ramping up support, it means 3 things. It's either a COVID hangover, which it could be. It could be that because of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X not being in stock last year, they're predicting that it's because it might be because this is the first full kind of year, I suppose, of PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. You could argue that last year was almost like a beta testing year. Only the most hardcore of fans got invested in that time period. But no, this is their first kind of mainstream year on the market, and maybe Nintendo just want to compete. Potentially, for sure. I mean, that's certainly a conclusion one could come to. And it's possibly even more realistic than what I believe. And what I believe is that this is a relaunch year for the Nintendo Switch. In 2017, they were selling people on new hardware. In 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, the output didn't match 2017's because it didn't need to. Obviously, they were still trying to sell people on Nintendo Switch, but like they always are, they're always trying to sell people on their hardware. That's just business. But it's just weird how hard they're going this year. This year, it's not even like it's a little bit more quantitative than any other year. It's significantly more stacked. Like, not a little, very significantly. 2017 was successful because they held back Wii U development so they could go hard on year 1 on Switch. That worked. So why are they going so hard on year 5? Like, clearly they're not winding down. This means, first of all, that Switch 2 or whatever is not going to be next year, possibly not even the year after next. Because, like I said, I feel like this is a relaunch year. A soft relaunch. Where Nintendo go, look at all the new games, and look at all our old games. Now, here's a Switch Pro, new hardware, plays everything better. All the old games that everyone has been talking about, they're all better now. And look at all the new stuff we've got. This is the best platform in the modern day. I've said in the past that I don't think there should be a Switch Pro, and I've detailed why in this video that I've linked in the description, and you can see it on screen. Basically, I won't go too into detail. I just feel that it's very short-termist and could drive overall sales down, but I think that's what they're going for this year. I feel like they want to lengthen the Switch's life somewhat with a Switch Pro, and to do a soft relaunch, they're going to need a lot of good software. However, getting back to Mario Kart, I think this is amazing DLC. You're doubling the content. The only thing that might turn people off is the art style. Very clearly, these new courses, it seems to me, are being done by a lot of the folk who worked on Tour, Mario Kart Tour, the mobile game. There's a lot of similarities between that art style and the art style of Mario Kart 8. And it's understandable. It's been... Mario Kart 8 came out in 2014. That's a long time. The only thing I worry about is how significant will that whiplash be? If you're playing online and all of a sudden you go from base game Mario Kart 8 to this booster pack, is there going to be much whiplash in seeing the kind of differing art style? I certainly hope not. Contrary to popular opinion, I actually really like Mario Kart Tour. I think that the art style is very aesthetically pleasing. However, I am a little bit concerned about that whiplash between the two art styles. Then again, I am quite fussy, I suppose, about this kind of thing. Perhaps I'm looking too deep into things. I can imagine it's not going to bother most people. It almost certainly confirms that there will be a Mario Kart 9, especially the fact that everything is modeled on Tour. Clearly the main team is hard at work on Mario Kart 9. In fact, I'd argue they're probably close to finishing development. Finally, I thought I'd just point out for a lot of folk that aren't too familiar with Mario Kart Tour, from the courses they've shown, they're not ripped directly from that game. Coconut Mall was never in Mario Kart Tour, neither was Choco Mountain. The Paris level was, but the courses, the classic courses that they're remixing, that they've shown so far, were not remixed in Mario Kart Tour. So this is not lazy. This is not some lazy, oh, we've got the assets, we're just gonna move them over. No, this is all being done from the ground up, and I really admire them for that. I do want to say this Nintendo Switch Online model is starting to weird me out a bit. I will elaborate more in a script. Again, a script. I have a script that I've been working on for the past 2 or 3 months, but it obviously keeps getting pushed back, like everything else, as new topics arise. But in short, I'm paying for online, right? I'm not paying for the other stuff. Those things are the bonuses, not the selling point. But the online service is so lackluster that it is now a bonus, and the bonuses are a selling point. Do you know what I mean? Like it's called Nintendo Switch Online, but the online part is the bonus. The way I see it, it's like if I ordered a bad couch from Amazon. The couch was expensive, and it's god awful, but like, man, did you see the bubble wrap it came in? That is f***ing incredible. But I'm paying for the couch. The bubble wrap is great, but it doesn't change how bad the couch is. I'd like to go in depth on these topics another time, but I'm just concerned with bloating the runtime. So that's the Cliff Notes version. However, moving on to my most wrong opinion of all time, Nintendo Switch Sports. Oh my god, like the significance of this. A lot of the predictions I made in my predictions video didn't come true to the letter of the law, but a lot of the logic I used held up. For example, I predicted Tomodachi Life to come to the Nintendo Switch, but that wasn't exactly the prediction. The prediction was that every single February, Nintendo announced a casually oriented game that appeals to casual audiences to be released in the first half of the year. It's just consistent, like Labo, Clubhouse. So I predicted that Tomodachi Life would fill that niche, and I'm so glad. Like, as much as I love Tomodachi Life, I said as much in that video, but I am so glad it wasn't Tomodachi Life and it was Nintendo Switch Sports. It was perfect. Just perfect. And the fact that you can choose between Mii's and these new avatars is just an excellent addition. Because I know a lot of people have problems with the Mii's. Obviously I don't, because obviously have you seen the state of my channel? Oh my, there's very little I can say, because I'm still kind of shell-shocked that it even happened. I thought the Wii Sports brand was dead. I thought the closest we were ever going to get was Clubhouse. And I was delighted with Clubhouse, but this is so much better. And it's adding football. Like I've said, football is my favorite sport. And it actually looks good as well. It doesn't look terrible. It doesn't look half-baked. And they're adding in extra sports. It adds free updates. Oh, it's perfect. It's perfect. It's perfect. It's... Well, to be fair, whether it beats out Sports Resort is an entirely another question, because Sports Resort has Woohoo Island. We don't know yet if there's going to be a Woohoo Island kind of equivalent here. I certainly hope there will be. Doesn't seem like it at this particular moment in time, but again, we've only seen one trailer. It just looks remarkable, and I am absolutely over the moon. I don't think I've ever explicitly said it, I've just kind of alluded to it, but like, the Wii is my favorite system of all time. And that's silly, because like I've gone on record in the past to say that I absolutely love story-based, contextually logical, ambitious games like The Last of Us Part 2. I suppose intellectually stimulating experiences that push the medium forward, and yet the Wii is my favorite console. That the two things don't really add up. Nostalgia is its own beast, and it's just, I say all this to show how significant it is that I love the story-driven experiences, these PlayStation exclusives that push the boundaries of what can be achieved. And yet, the sequel to Wii Sports is... I'm gonna just literally destroy all my credibility right here, but you know what, I don't care. The sequel to Wii Sports is literally on the top of my most anticipated Games of the Year list, because of how much it means to me nostalgically. It was perfect. Perfect. Overall, I think this, like I alluded to at the start, I think this was the greatest Direct of all time. And not necessarily because it appealed to a broad, widespread amount of people, because it didn't. It really only appealed to people who grew up with the Wii, like me. It was almost tailor-made to fit my tastes, which is why I loved it. But like every single... you'll see on the list, I'm showing it on screen now, everything above triangle strategy, you know, like Earthbound, the Metroid Dread update, Fire Emblem Warriors, these are all very good announcements. Like in any other Direct, those would be almost at the top. And yet, every single time I thought we'd peaked, it just kept on going. The lows were pretty low in MLB and the Disney game, but everything after that, everything after that was just good. But we went from abysmal to good, and then from good to great to excellent to amazing. There was no bad. For sure, we had the two Fs, but everything apart from that was like C, B, A, S. It was remarkable. And I just like to add in, after all the toxicity in social media in recent weeks, especially in relation to films and games and the like, everything was remarkably positive last night. It just seemed like everyone just unanimously agreed that it was great, and even those who didn't think it was great were happy for the people who did think it was great. And I just thought that was really nice. It was just a really, really nice time to be a Nintendo fan, I suppose. So I suppose that's where I'll end off. Thanks, as always, for listening in.